So I wanted to shoot a quick video today about 2-post versus 4-post. I have never professionally worked at a place with lifts, so this is my own kind of DIY experience. I'm probably a little bit beyond the average scope of a DIYer, but that's my perspective on it. So I've already got my video and my review of 9 years of ownership with this 2-post MaxJax. And right now I've got a lot of stuff going on. It's a little bit more of a mess than I really wanted to capture on video, but it's a good time to shoot this video, so that's what I'm doing. So I've got a Corolla right now on this 2-post, and the thing about this video is kind of targeted at people that have probably never used a lift, because I'm going to kind of cover some of the things that are maybe obvious, but you know, maybe you don't know if you haven't used a lift. So this MaxJax lift, one of the things I didn't necessarily talk about a ton is it is so compact. This is probably, both my lifts, my 4-post and my 2-post have 6,000 pound capacities. So this 2-post MaxJax is a mid-rise. So it only rises like 30 or 43 inches, I believe is the spec. So you're definitely gonna be using a stool, rolling around underneath it, but you have amazing access to everything. As you can see, it is wide open. Any suspension stuff, wide open. And in fact, it's kind of like chest height for me. I'm a pretty little dude, so you know, it doesn't need to be 8 feet up in the air. So it's a really good height for doing any brake suspension stuff. You know, the lift arms are obviously in the center of the car here, so you have full access up here. You've got nothing underneath, so rolling around on a stool, rolling a floor jack around, every once in a while you need to set the car down and support it with like a floor jack or something. Any of that stuff, just wide open. And back to the MaxJax, it is just tiny. Its footprint is tiny, its columns are tiny, which you could maybe be concerned about its strength, but I think if you stick to its 6,000 pound rating, you will have no issues. They wouldn't rate it at that if it couldn't take that. So yeah, just very out of the way. The only thing about a 2-post is going to be getting in and out of it. And so back on this side, and I've got it a little bit closer to this side than the other side, but you only have so much clearance to swing the door open. So there again, I'm a little dude, so it doesn't really affect me. But if you're a big guy, you might have trouble getting in and out of things depending on placement of the column. The column is pretty much gonna wind up in the middle of the door here. So that's something to be aware of. But otherwise, the actual lift footprint is tiny, and it gives you amazing access. One of the things that you don't get with this MaxJax is enough height to be able to use something like a standard transmission jack under it. Of course, this is a front-wheel drive car. With a car like this, I would generally be dropping the whole subframe. This one's laid out a little bit different, but if I was doing like a transmission on something like this or engine work, sometimes I'll drop the whole subframe out, and that works out all right. I've got a cart that I will roll under it, and I'll unbolt basically or disconnect everything, drop it down, undo like maybe the 4 or 6 main bolts holding the subframe in, and then lift the car up off of it. And this has enough clearance for that, but a regular transmission jack does not fit under here. So if you're doing a transmission in a rear-wheel drive vehicle, this is not gonna work on this lift. I would suggest looking for a taller rise lift, which may or may not fit in your attached garage. I've got 10-foot ceilings in here, and I've got great clearance. I can put a Suburban on here and lift it its full 43 inches of lift, and it works well. But I still can't put a transmission jack under it to drop out a transmission. So it definitely complicates that a little bit. So that's kind of the quick rundown on the 2-post. The other thing I should mention is the only thing, so this has hydraulic cylinders, 1 in each column, and that is what does the lifting. There's very little mechanics to this. It is simply a hydraulic cylinder that pushes the lift arms and assembly straight up. So the only thing that I need to do, and you can see a little bit of it in here, is you're supposed to on a pretty regular basis spray some lithium grease in here. So I've got like an aerosol can with lithium grease, and I just spray that in every once in a while, and that is the maintenance to this. I suppose eventually, you know, every so often you should probably change out the ATF that is in the power unit here. But yeah, otherwise very low maintenance, very few moving parts. It just works. So we're gonna step out to the shed and take a look at the 4-post and talk about that one. Hey, it's a mess out here too. Don't look at anything but the lift. So here we have the 4-post, and this is a 6,000 pound 4-post. And I couldn't tell you all the dimensions, but I can tell you that the runners on it are 156 inches long. So here's where things get interesting. The 2-post in the garage is very versatile. I can put anything from like that Corolla or a Mini, a Fiat 500, some of the smaller stuff you might encounter. I've had all that on that 2-post, up to a Suburban, full-size trucks of different lengths. Doesn't matter, works out great. You come out here to this 4-post, and there's a lot of those same vehicles that I can put on that 2-post, that tiny little 2-post in the garage, and I can't put them on this. And the reason is because the wheelbase is too long. So there again, 156 inches is what I've got to work with. But something to keep in mind is that the wheelbase is measured from the center of each wheel. So if this car, which of course doesn't, but this Volkswagen Passat here, if it had a 156 inch wheelbase, the center of the wheel would be hanging, or the center of the wheel would be right at the edge, so it would not fit. You'd need probably 3 more inches. So basically 153 inch wheelbase is and that might even be pushing it a little bit, but that's going to be, you might even want to plan 6 inches. There's a very small contact patch on each wheel that's actually sitting on the lift, but basically the ramp on the back is not load bearing. It only is load bearing right now because it's sitting on the ground. As soon as you lift it up, those things actually lift right off. If you put weight on them, you just bend them. So you have to be within the runners here. So that's a limiting factor, which is a surprisingly common limit to run into. And the next limiting factor is the width. With a car like this, it's not a big deal, but a lot of times when I'm pulling full-size trucks in here, even some of the half tons, but especially when you get to like the Super Duty trucks or the heavy duty trucks, I'm flipping the mirrors in because the mirrors aren't clearing the cables and the columns. So, and the footprint, as you can see, these come out similar distance to what the 2-post does from, the edge of the car or whatever. The overall width I haven't actually measured, and depending on what lift you get, of course, that'll vary. But then you've got the length where this thing, takes up, roughly 156 inches. So this has a much bigger footprint. Now, when this lift is out in a bigger spot like this, it's not a big deal. But if you were putting this in an attached garage, this would definitely be a lot tighter fit. So, just a lot more real estate required for a 4-post. Now, here's what you really would want one of these for. What I would recommend you want one of these for is if you've got, whether it is an attached garage or not, if you are storing a car, if you've got like an extra car, a collector car, something like that that's seasonal use, and you want to put one of these in your third stall and put it up on top for the winter, this would be the lift to get, hands down. That's actually when I bought this lift, I had it tucked away in the corner here, and I had my seasonal car parked on top of it, and I could park another car underneath it. So the square footage per dollar ratio is incredibly good if you're looking for extra space. But then you start to try and work on it, and this is great for oil changes, but only if they don't want a tire rotation also, because obviously you're still sitting on the wheels here. So anytime you're going to do any brake suspension stuff, you still need to lift the car up off these runners. So you can get bridges that go across with jacks in them to lift points up. It can get expensive adding on all those accessories, but you can do it on one of these. But it is definitely not as convenient to work on things, not even close, as a 2-post. So really, I would recommend one of these if you are primarily storing a car and maybe want to do some oil changes here and there, since you do have a lift. But yeah, you can just see how the other thing is, if you do get a longer vehicle on here that's kind of pushing the max length here, you're going to start to have trouble taking wheels off, because if you've got the center of the wheel right about there, you'll be able to take the lug nuts off, but you might not even be able to pull the wheel off of there. If it's a bigger truck that's obviously going to be longer, you're going to be even tighter to these columns. So that is going to be a problem. And then let's see here. So if you hang it off the front, right now we're not all the way to the front here. So if we go forward further, we're hanging it off the front. We have really good access to everything around the front. But there again, these columns are probably going to wind up in your way for certain things if you're trying to do a lot of work on a 4-post. But this one has a rise of, I don't know exactly what it is actually. I don't usually go all the way up because it becomes higher than is convenient to work on things. So it goes plenty high anyways, and I've got a 12-foot ceiling clearance in here, so it works out well. And like I said, it's great for changing oil, or if I'm gonna do a transmission job in a rear wheel drive like a truck or something, then this is the lift I use because I've got a nice big transmission jack, and that makes quick work out of it. So so it's more the height that makes it good for transmission jobs than the fact that it's a 4-post. It's just in comparison to my mid-rise 2-post, I get higher lift out of this and can use things like my full-on transmission jack. Let's see, I think that pretty well covers everything. I guess one other important note is that this does not need to be anchored down. I had it in a different location. I moved it over here, which gets into another option that you can add on these, and I actually have them. I've got casters that I can put underneath this thing. So you can actually put a car on it. You can't lift the car up, but with a car on it, you actually have to lift the car up like 6 inches, and then you put the casters under it, and then the columns need to get tied up so that they're not sitting on the ground anymore, and then you can roll it around. So again, another option you can add to these, and it's very low commitment because you can drop it down wherever you want to try it out, see how it works, scoot it over a foot, scoot it over 10 feet. That's another advantage to it. So here's a shot of this one up in the air. I've got about another foot I could go, but this is reasonably high up in the air. So it does give you some pretty good access to everything down the center. If you're doing exhaust work, anything like that, fluid changes, definitely work out pretty good on something like this. And you could even do, in this case, rear sway bar end links. That would be easy to get to. But yeah, you're gonna be limited on the suspension other than those end links, and like brake work and all that. That's gonna be pretty tough to do on a 4-post like this. Couple side notes here. I added some LED lighting in here. I've got some magnets on these things, and as you can see, they work pretty dang good. It lights it up pretty nice under here, makes things easier. So since I talked about the mechanics of the 2-post a little bit, I want to talk about the mechanics of the 4-post. So you got your power unit right here on one of the columns, and then you got your hydraulic cylinder tucked up underneath it, under one of the runners here, and all 4 cables attached to the end of that. So you've got 1 cable per column to lift this. So what that means is that you've got pulley systems everywhere. You've got pulleys over here. You've got a pulley covered under each cover here because the cable comes in and then runs up to the top. So, but over on this side, you've got a couple pulleys down there. You've got 4 pulleys down here. There's quite a bit of stuff going on. When I bought this lift, the guy I bought it from gave me a box full of extra pulleys and bushings and things like that. It's been good to me, but I have had to swap out a couple bushings on these pulleys. So, and then there's adjustments on the top of each column to make sure that you've got everything set right so that you don't have one corner going up faster or sooner than the others. So, so yeah, there's a little bit more going on with the 4-post and the maintenance that you have to do on that. So be aware of that. Also, the 2-post that I have has no cables, no pulleys. It has 2 hydraulic cylinders, and you just spray some lithium lube into the columns occasionally. So this thing is a little bit more to keep tabs on than on my 2-post. So here is the oil drain catch can deal that I use under this lift. This is like a 20-gallon, I believe. It's pretty big, pretty good capacity, and then when it's full, you can hook an air compressor up to it and pressurize the tank to dump it out. So I've got this thing totally buried in the back here, but I've got this Sonex transmission jack, and this is great. I use this for dropping transmissions. I use this for dropping gas tanks. It's like a triple telescoping hydraulic cylinder on it, so it has plenty of lift, and it also drops down low enough that you can get everything out from under the vehicle on that 4-post. A bottle jack is another accessory. A lot of times I will be able to sneak, and I don't think it would fit on this car, but I'm able to sneak a bottle jack under the frame of a vehicle and lift it up. So if you do need to take a wheel off, something as simple as a bottle jack, or you can put a bridge across and put a bottle jack on that. So there are ways to lift it up. It's just another step compared to the 2-post. I think the best way to summarize this is a 2-post is gonna be the way to go if you really wanna work on stuff really not recommended for storing vehicles. If you're primarily going to be storing vehicles and have the space, just make sure you measure, because the dimensions of the 4-post are a lot more critical. The width of it and the length of the runners is much more critical than on a 2-post. A 2-post will practically work on anything as long as the weight rating is right. A 4-post, of course, you still got the weight rating to deal with, but you got a lot of other dimensions to worry about too. So hopefully that sheds some light on what you might be looking for, what might best fit your needs. Thanks for watching.